G'day guys, Clint here recording episode number 60 of The Full Landscape with Judy and Paul from ARO. ARO are an education provider, private RTO, that are working here in South Australia to help landscapers and turf management professionals with their qualifications. If you are thinking about getting an apprentice or a trainee, or you are thinking about becoming one, this is a podcast for you. There's a lot of information around the way that training is delivered and the government support in this. If you've got any questions about this or anything else, please do not hesitate to get in touch. And if you want to get in touch with ARO, their details will be linked up in the comments below, or you can touch base with me and I will put you in touch. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. I know there's a lot of people watching these that are not subscribed and you do not want to miss the next episode. Thank you. Thank you both for coming in. For the people watching and listening, if you could just give us a brief introduction of each of you and how you fit into the landscape industry. Obviously, the podcast is The Full Landscape, and then I'll get into the questions.
Yeah, so thanks, Clint. So I'm Judy Parks. So I'm operating as the Chief Operating Officer for ARO College, and my background in education is from a management perspective. We worked with Paul previously in an aged care organisation, and we helped to develop training for the industry there. So for myself, my grandfather was a greenskeeper, and as a young girl, I wanted to be a greenskeeper like him. And he told me that that girls weren't strong enough to do that. So I was like, okay. So I ended up going into IT. It's a very, very different field. But I've always loved the outdoors. My parents were keen gardeners and everything. So why I have been part of ARO, and when Paul and I decided to do this, was because I just wanted to be in that industry, have always wanted to, and now gives me that opportunity. So I was based in Sydney, and this has been a fantastic opportunity to come across to South Australia and set up shop here, and so I'm moving everything across my life, loving it.
So you've moved here off the back of the acquisition?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Paul Leeden, CEO, ARO College. So my background is in registered training organisations. So this would be the second RTO that I've owned and operated. Had another one between 2008 and 2013, and that was in the transport and logistics sector. And since then, I worked for a number of RTOs, private ones. Ran a beauty therapy college for Ella Vache, business courses. Judy and I then worked together at Hammondcare. We worked for the Dementia Centre, so we set up what was an internal registered training organisation to go commercial, and so we were part of that project. I actually worked for Judy in that project, and I think we enjoyed working so much together when we left Hammondcare that we stayed in contact, and it wasn't too long after that we found this RTO. So I work. I've been working for a number of years as a consultant to registered training organisations, helping them with rectifications and registrations. Customers come to me, say, I need an RTO to buy. Can you go and find me one to buy? So I would do the due diligence and figure out what was a good buy. And I found one, and I thought we found ARO College as part of that process, looking for another client of mine. And I knew Judy and I were always in communication. I said, well, why don't you have a look at this? And 3-4 months later, we were here.
Wow.
Happened pretty quickly. So we're so I'm based in Sydney. I come to Adelaide, once every probably 3 weeks now. Come for a week, spend time here, and the rest of the time I run the business and the RTO side from Sydney.
So is it ARO or
ARO?
ARO.
So ARO is the Greek mythology for to
Ancient Greek word for to toil the land.
Yeah,
it's interesting because I'm hearing it being called ARO.
Yeah,
which implies an acronym,
well,
and it's not
because it's not. It's
an
letters,
ancient
it's
Greek word.
We actually thought of redoing the logo to have the grave across the eye so that people would understand that it's an RO. So, so it's actually an ancient term to toil and to grow effectively.
Yeah.
So, and that was a name that was that we inherited, and we did actually think about changing it. But once we looked to the name, it was absolutely appropriate for the type of business that we are now.
How old was RO when? Like it was at first.
It was first registered. So yes, we did. The original owner died a few years ago, and his wife Sylvia was running the business for him. But the RTO was originally established in 2001, so it has been going for over 20 years, and it's had funding contract with Skills SA for a good half dozen years now.
There was obviously a period between then and now where there was some pretty heavy government-funded training. Is that kind of faded now, and it's harder to run an RTO now than it would have been 10, 12 years ago?
Look, I don't know what the numbers were back a few years ago, but the amount of subsidy that we do receive from the state government does cover most of the costs. Yeah. But to answer your question directly, the Commonwealth funding fluctuates significantly, and there's two types of funding. There's the funding that the employer receives from the Commonwealth for taking on an apprentice, and at the moment, my understanding, it's sitting at 10% of wage, capped at $6,000 a year. So if you engage an apprentice, the Commonwealth will provide you an incentive, and it's not meant to cover the costs of the training. It's meant to provide you an incentive to offset most of the cost of the training, which is a problem that we have with some of the employers. They're expecting to not pay anything, but there is a cost to bringing on an apprentice, obviously.
Well, they're business people. They don't want to pay for anything.
Of course they don't.
I don't.
And so 12 months ago during COVID, the amount that the Commonwealth was subsidising or incentivising the employers was 50% of the wage. And after COVID, that diminished and it's now 10% of wage. So, but if you've got a landscape gardener, you're paying him $60,000 a year. The feds will give you $6,000 a year for 2 years. So that's $12,000 towards the cost of training. So it does cover a significant amount of that, but it doesn't necessarily cover the costs of a student not being on the tools, working and generating a revenue for the business. It doesn't necessarily cover that. So that's where our model, I think, differs greatly to the public providers model, and that is that we go on site 6 weeks intervals between subjects, and we train and assess on site, as opposed to over a 3 or 4 hour period, instead of a student being off the tools in a classroom with the public provider, learning in a boring classroom setting in a simulated environment, which doesn't get the best outcomes. So our model is on site, using real equipment, using real customers' experiences, and we train and assess on site, which gives a better outcome, we think, than what the TAFE model does.
So do you have a business in Sydney as well, or
I do. Yeah. I do. I have a business in Sydney. So I've got the education consulting business, which I run out of there, and my wife has a business called Shipshape Homes, hashtag Shipshape Homes, and so
and that's you were told to say that.
It's a property staging and styling business. So she works with, and so I own the business with her, but she runs it, and so
you're there to take the fall if anything goes wrong.
He's the muscles.
He can do the jail time.
Well, when I go back to Sydney, I usually get roped into a couple of jobs. So she works with a couple of select real estate agents. So we're on the northern beaches of Sydney, and so we work with some estate agents there and exclusively with them. And so we prepare properties for sale. So we stage and style it and get ready for sale. So she does that, and it's great. She does 50, 60 properties a year, so it keeps her pretty busy, and she's pretty fit, and it's a good little business.
It's funny. I think I know a little bit about it, and it's not as easy as people think. You've got a lot of stock sitting in random areas, and finding that balance between stock that you need and stock that you don't need, and then finding enough warehousing to have. You can't have houses. You can't have all your stock back in the warehouse at any point because there's not enough room.
That's right. So it's a challenge, and then stock being out of date. So. And trends coming through, so she's just setting herself up now to go to the trade shows and get in front of the competition. Yeah. So, but yeah, we're looking to expand, and
can we talk about Smart and Skilled?
We can talk about Smart and Skilled. Yeah. So I'm not quite there yet, but yeah. So I do have another business. Yeah.
Well, hang on, is this like an exclusive? It's not out yet.
No. Well, the Skills SA, they do funding, but New South Wales government has a similar thing.
Okay.
Right, and so people don't want to pay the full amount to train their apprentices. So we can only do it with some support from the state governments. And so the New South Wales government we've applied.
We can cut this out if it's
That's what I was thinking. We can.
No, we can. I guess we can talk about it.
It's not secret. It's a public thing.
Yeah,
that we've applied for funding in New South Wales as well, particularly in some of the regional areas.
Yep.
So like the Riverina and the Murray, and ones that are jut to South Australia, because we've got some trainers who said, I'm happy to travel around.
Yeah.
So the idea would be that we could sort of expand and because we've got students out at Renmark and places like that, so we just sort of pop across the border and
what they can take advantage of a state government funding if they're doing it in that state.
Yeah. So you've got to be living in the state. So when I go and register new students, they've got to show me that they're a South Australian resident, so that the South Australian government will cough up some money. Similar in New South Wales, but we're trying to go to areas where other people don't go, and because we do landscaping, we also do horticulture, and that's something that those regional rural communities, it's a huge thing for them, and there's no, you call them public training providers, but basically we're saying TAFE. The TAFEs don't often have places in those because there's not the enough students for them to have a viable. So going out
more nimble because you're
exactly,
private, right?
And we go out. We'll go out for one student.
Yeah. So I think I probably need to get a 50,000 foot view of the whole business before we go any further, so that the people listening can get an understanding of what it is that you exactly do, and that'll probably help me ask questions related to what the landscape industry is doing. So. You are the directors of ARO, which is South Australia only at the moment.
We have some students who we train in the Northern Territory, and so it's an online model for them, and in Queensland, again, online model, and we go out every 3 months to visit them in person.
So there's a lot of flying. That's got to be a cost that...
there is a bit. There's a bit of travel. Getting well used to the Virgin Lounges. I think it's... Although the lustre is growing up pretty quickly.
There is no shine on those lounges. I think the mining industry has destroyed the lounges.
Yeah.
Like you basically, if you fly enough, you get to go in there. It doesn't mean you have to...
Yeah, that's exactly
right.
That's right. No, look, so a helicopter view of what we do is so we're a registered training organisation, registered nationally to deliver nationally accredited courses in all states and territories.
So that registration you have to apply at national level?
Yeah, and we're actually up for re-registration in 3 months. And so the acquisition of this RTO was the joining of the dots. There were a number of pieces that we wanted to see in place so that we could, do what we do and use the skills that we had to take a business that probably wasn't as mature or as well run as it should have been or could have been, and to add our skills to that, and over a few years to improve that business, but at the same time make an impact on the industry that we're working with. So we've got a huge amount of experience doing that, and I've been running RTOs for 15 years, and this is my second one. So from international students, CRICOS, to state-funded RTOs, to vet student loans, to fee-for-service, to running RTOs with 3,500 students and 30 trainers. So the scale is not the issue. It was more about us finding an opportunity that we could take the worst house in the best street and revamp it and make it the best house in the best street. So as an RTO is accredited nationally, the head office and the registration of the business is registered here in South Australia. We've just taken over a retail shop in the main street of Harndorf, so number 5 Mount Barker Road, Harndorf, the old chocolate number 5 factory there.
As we were setting up the shop, people were coming in to buy chocolates, and I'm going, we don't sell chocolates anymore. I said to Paul, let's just go to the chocolate shop, buy a whole lot, stick them on a shelf, and
add 50% and be like, well...
Yeah.
Merchandising is, I guess, we'll get to there. But so we're registered in South Australia, and so any RTO can operate nationally if they've got the capacity or the infrastructure to deliver online training and such like that. So we do. But our core business, 90% of our business is in South Australia, providing apprenticeship training with apprenticeship providers under a subsidised training arrangement, which we have with Skills SA. So we have what's called a funded activities agreement with the Department for Education in South Australia, which is headed up by Skills SA, and that means that we're approved. They will subsidise the cost of training delivery for us to provide training to apprentices as part of a training contract. And the training contract exists between an apprenticeship provider, which might be MEGT or MAS National. So they're the two main only apprenticeship providers here in South Australia, between the apprenticeship provider with the state government and with us and the employer. It's basically a three-way training contract. And once that training contract is established, We go out and deliver the training, and when there is a result, like a competent or a not competent, or a fail or a pass, the state government will then pay us for the delivery of that training.
So you said there was Max. No, what did you say? MEGT.
MAS National. So MAS
Yep.
National and MEGT.
They're the only two?
They're the only two current approved apprenticeship providers in South Australia.
Yep.
But I know of some others that are tendering, and I think there's a tender process open up towards the end of this year for more apprenticeship providers to play in South Australia.
So how do they fit in? They manage the apprenticeship and you manage the training?
So what happens is you're an employer. So let's say you're an employer, you're a small business, you've got a team of 3 or 4 guys in the field, your landscape construction business. You want more bodies, right? And you need to bring new people on to grow your business. Best way is to engage an apprentice, get someone young, 18, 19, someone who's good. You get them on site for 3 or 4 months, sort them out, see if they're the guy for you. You then say, okay, what I'd like to do is put you on as a formal apprentice. Yep. So then you as the employer then go to the apprenticeship centre, or you contact us and we'll say, go and you choose MAS National or MEGT. We don't care who you use. It's entirely up to you. You figure out who you want to work with. They then will do an eligibility assessment on your employee to see whether they're eligible for an apprenticeship. And if you are, then MEGT, say example, if you use them, they will enter in a contract with you and the federal government, and that'll enable the federal government to subsidise your salary and to pay you as the employer. And then MEGT will create the relationship with Skills SA, and we then get notified by Skills SA that this student is under an apprenticeship. Would you like to undertake the training? And we then go in and assess the student, do an upfront assessment, and even if they meet the requirements and we feel like they have the capacity to pass the course, then we will engage them formally. And that whole relationship starts around the apprenticeship provider. They're the linchpin.
So MEGT or the
MAS National, yeah.
They are doing the heavy lifting for the government from a management standpoint around the actual apprenticeship.
From the contracting sort of
so
stuff.
they handle the paperwork.
Yeah.
And then an association like ARO would do the education.
Correct.
And they're the two pieces to the puzzle. And then you've obviously got state and federal government.
So the state government subsidise the RTO and the Commonwealth government subsidise the employer.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
So if a landscaper in South Australia now, when I've had phone calls this week of people looking to, I've got 2 questions. One of them is about apprenticeship versus trainee, and then obviously there's what do they need to do. So if they were looking to have an apprentice in landscaping, their first contact would be to go to one of those 2.
They would contact one of the apprenticeship providers, and then they would provide.
That's assuming that they've already got the body.
Oh, okay. So the start of that funnel is I need a body or I have a body.
Yeah.
I have someone employed.
So if you need someone, where do you go? You don't have a person.
We don't get involved in that.
There's no solution for that.
Yeah, you can go to organisations like group training organisations, which are labour hire.
Yeah, okay.
You can do that way, or you can just recruit.
Yep, and actually post an ad-on.
Yeah,
that's
and
right.
A lot of the clients, because I do the registration, so once this whole process goes through, I go through and I meet the employer and I meet the student or the potential student, and they have to do a language and literacy test. And a lot of them say to me, I hated school, why do I have to do this? And I say, because mate, let's say you're a landscaper and you've got to order some, sand. How are you going to figure out? You need some level of maths to know what to order.
So they need to have a literacy level that's a certain level. Yeah, that it doesn't mean it's university.
Oh gosh, no,
level.
no,
That's
not
right.
at all. Yeah. As long as they can do basic maths and basic English, they're good.
And so for that potential apprentice, I guess I'm hearing, don't be daunted by that. Like it's not
at all.
You just have to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
And we also have support for that. Yeah. So there are other organisations called MADEC, M-A-D-E-C, which are around, and they have an arrangement or contract with the Skills SA to provide support services. So if we identify that a learner has some learning difficulties or a physical disability that prevents them from learning, or whatever it might be, they might be poor in numeracy, that it doesn't mean that they can't enrol. What it means is that we will provide them with extra support through MADEC, who are experts in adult language literacy and numeracy, and they will provide support as they're progressing through the course.
So that happens simultaneously. That
happens simultaneously.
A literacy education and then move into the actual education of the training.
No, they do it at the same time. Yeah. So we've got some students who've done modified year 12 and everything, and so they get extra support.
That's good.
Yeah.
They
Well,
just-
and look, it makes sense. I mean, that's the function of the government in its best form, right?
Yeah.
Like supporting its citizens.
supporting the
to be
people
able
that need to be the most
support
supported.
themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think also you're talking about how do you find the body? So a lot of the clients that we have, they tend to bring on someone as a labourer for a while, and once they've been there for sort of a little bit of, as you said, a few months, they realise that this is a good fit for our company. That's when they sort of start
So
to train.
everyone's doing tests. Like the business owners testing the
cultural fit, if you like, and
the work ethic. You're testing the education
Capacity to
as a
complete the
minimum,
course. Yeah.
and then the government are testing the eligibility from a citizenship /
Yeah, and so the eligibility at the moment is actually quite loose. It's actually looser than it was in the past. So in the past, your eligibility was that you weren't able to have a qualification in the area that you were seeking an apprenticeship for. Nowadays, you don't need to.
As in, if you've got a turf, like a Hort Cert 4, you couldn't then go to
you couldn't get into a diploma of Cert 4, but now you can. So all of in fact, at the moment, what we've just applied to have added to our scope of registration is the Diploma of Landscape Construction, which would suit people like yourselves, potentially, who run businesses, landscape construction businesses, who may have already had their Certificate 3 in Landscape Construction 10 years ago, but they want to get new sort of management level, diploma level skills. The state government actually subsidise that under an apprenticeship. You can actually make yourself an apprentice of your own company and seek the subsidy to achieve a diploma. And so you asked before about the changing nature of, the Commonwealth subsidies dropped a bit, but the state government and the federal government, they kind of, that's not a perfect system, but if you look at what's happened over time, they actually work together quite well. And so where the Commonwealth might take a bit away, the state government gives a bit more. And I have to say, I've dealt with a lot of state government funding operations, and I have to say that the government in South Australia would have to be the best.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's the best subsidised, it's the most open. It's a bit like it is in WA, but because, South Australia suffers from, it doesn't have the population concentration, so it needs to engage external RTOs from outside of South Australia, for example, but it needs to go outside of South Australia to get the skills to come in, and so they're actually more open
because it needs to be appealing for
as opposed to Victoria,
an
who
RTO
are
to come
completely
here and
closed.
actually take the time and spend the money.
That's
because
right.
it costs a lot. So people say, why should I have to pay anything? I say, well, because if you want to pay nothing, then you go to TAFE.
Yeah.
And they'll go off to a classroom. Yeah. These are kids who generally hate school anyway. Yeah. But, I can't run it for the same price as TAFE because I've got to pay staff and I've got to have premises. So
we see
people understand it.
When we do training, and I start all of the trainings, and we do like a 2-hour irrigation training, and I'll start it saying, I'm very aware that the reason you've gone into a trade for a large majority of you, and not all of you, is because you probably weren't comfortable sitting still for long periods of time inside. So I'm sorry, we're going to do as interactive as we can. So you've covered that off with your business model. So that must be, I'm guessing that's an expensive way to do it in the early days, but you see the long-term benefit of doing it?
Oh, it has to look. One of the benefits that we bought the business that was established. So we bought a business with 6 utes and established that that mechanism had been well entrenched. So the upfront, for us to bring on a trainer these days, it's a salary plus a $35,000 vehicle at the moment. So it's actually a bigger commitment for us. And we'll talk about the attraction of talent at the moment. For us, it's a challenge for us to attract trainers as it is for every industry in Australia. So the cost for us to get a trainer going is high, but
and the travel is expensive because they can sometimes only see one student a day because of the distances they have to travel.
And they're staying potentially overnight.
Yeah, because we say, if you can't drive for 4 hours, see someone for 5 hours. I'm not going to let you drive home. You're too tired. So,
So the upfront, and we bought a business that had well-established infrastructure, and we've just added to that.
We've actually made a significant investment, to be honest. Our clients are seeing that.
I'm processing it in my head while you're talking, and it's I guess it's not like a tech company, but you're going to have runway where there's you're pumping more money into it than you're getting at, like that. It's even to a point where you're not even breaking even. I'm guessing, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, that the long-term gain is that you get to a critical mass or a terminal velocity where they aren't just seeing 1, they're seeing 6, or you've got regions where you've got more activity over a 3-day period.
Or we can start to say, okay, if we've got no students in that region, okay, we will take on, maybe we'll try and find 3 or 4 to make it feasible to go there, for example. But yeah, you're right. So at the moment, we've got this very big, capital investment that we're doing, but we do see that it's going to pay off. And yesterday I met with a client, and they said they can actually see, even just in the few months that we've been around, this is actually day 100 of ownership. Oh, wow. So it's kind of a exciting day for us.
Yeah.
That they can see some changes. They said that we're bringing in a lot more structure. And so things like they used to say to us, we don't know when your trainers are coming or what they're doing, so we're bringing in a lot more communication with the clients. It
is so important. We've got 6 people doing Cert 4s now, and we were meant to have a full week of face-to-face last week, and it got cancelled. We rang up Friday before last week and said
It's not with us, by the way.
No, it's not with you guys.
No. There's only one other option.
I won't say who it's with because I'm not throwing anyone under the bus, but people should be able to work it out.
Yeah.
And we rang up because we had to print off training module documentation, and I think it was...
You printed off yourself?
Well, that's what we assumed. So we printed off one, and it was 176 pages, and we got 6 people doing it. Mm-hmm. So you've got... I mean, it depends where you sit from a carbonality standpoint, if you care about paper or not, or if you care about the cost of the paper. Mm. And then he rang them and said, hey, do we have to print all this off? And they're like, oh, didn't you hear? It's not happening. We've cancelled it. You should have got an email. So and I've got senior management moving into locations to cover the people doing the training, and all that fell down. And they're like, oh, can we just do it, in a couple of weeks? We're like, no.
And I think because we
don't operate like that. We know what we're doing in October and November.
Yeah, because we run businesses.
Yeah, we've been on the other
we
side.
Understand, exactly. So we understand you can't just, and the number of people who ring us the day before and say, oh, we're too busy, your trainer can't come tomorrow. I'm going, well, I can't afford to have someone sitting there twiddling their thumbs for a day. They are coming, or you're paying a cancellation fee.
Yeah. And I think that's completely reasonable. And even, I don't know, look, my general manager's dealing with these guys, but you can't, there's no ramifications for that. Well, there might be 6 people don't finish that training, because when are we going to do it? So.
I think the what we're trying to do, I guess, is that we want to be a viable competitor to the public provider, and for people like yourselves, there needs to be options.
It doesn't mean you have to be the same price or cheaper, though.
No, we're not.
We're not going to.
You're providing better value.
Well, we think we are. We think we are. Look, and part of what else I do in the vocational space is I'm involved with ITECA, which is the Independent Tertiary Education Council of Australia. So we're the peak body representing RTOs across country. So I'm currently sitting on the New South Wales committee for that, and I've been involved with ITECA for about 5 or 6 years. So, and we're very much about public RTOs, and we advocate for private RTOs against the unevenness of the distribution of funding that gets provided to public providers. And so the concept of fee-free TAFE is hugely diminishing to public providers, because it creates an unnatural and unlevel playing field, such that organisations like yourselves who go for the fee-free option, doesn't cost you anything or the student anything to go there, but the model that is delivered doesn't necessarily give the best outcomes. And what it does do is it creates a false economy around that training for this industry and other industries that we're involved in should be free, and that private providers like us should be in a position, just in retaining the revenue we get from the subsidy, we should be able to operate on that, and we can't.
Well, you can't lower your customer service level to match your competitors, kind of thing, right?
No, look, because
they get everything provided.
That's
the government provide their buildings, the government provide their infrastructure, and
they don't have real costs. No. So and they're a department of the state government. Yeah. So
But to be fair, like most trainees and apprentices in Australia do not go to private training organisations. They actually go to private.
I'll tell you what the percentage is. In South Australia, in 2021, the data was that 91% of all vocational training occurring in South Australia was done by private providers. Yeah. TAFE did less than 10% of training in South Australia.
And this is across everything, not just
every vocational course,
trades,
not just
hairdressing, chefing, whatever.
But TAFE will receive about 70% of the funding and do about 10% of the work.
Yeah, okay.
Let that sink in. That's pretty staggering.
Yeah.
Which means they're actually very, very inefficient financially.
That doesn't surprise me.
No, it's a bureaucracy.
You compare a private enterprise to a government department that does the same kind of behaviours in anything, even outside of education, and you're going to get that.
And look, a good example of this is that we had, just before the end of last year, we had a student that wanted to enrol in landscape construction, I think it was, and she was east of Renmark, pretty remote, and she wanted to do the landscape construction, but the only place that she could do it was at Uradler. Sorry, not Uradler, the Urbray, excuse me. And so if she wanted to do that qualification and get into the landscape industry, which is a problem that your industry faces, attracting talent, right?
Would have even more shortages.
That's right. So where do they go
Yeah.
to get their training and apprenticeship? So we take the view that we will, even though it will cost us to go and see her one-on-one on site, we feel that it is our responsibility as a responsible RTO that has the privilege of having a funding contract with Skills SA. It is our responsibility to go to those regions and deliver training one-on-one and support people in the less well-off areas, should you say, to get themselves a career and get into the industry and support the sector.
Makes complete sense. You think if you've got values, if your values are tied to, it's not the business obviously has to make money, and that's why we do business. But if you've got values around the how the people are treated, you can't pick and choose the most profitable trainees, right?
That's exactly right.
That doesn't work.
Well, the last company we worked for was the Dementia Centre. So we worked in the dementia space and the dementia education space. So by our nature, that's how we're wired. We're here to support people in need, and particularly those that are less fortunate than others. And we've reached a point in our lives where we're financially secure. Our kids are grown up. We own our houses. My kids almost finished school. Thank God, school fees are about to finish. So, but it's but we're at a happy point in our lives where
we're not trying to wreak every dollar out of.
It's not about making money for us. The money will come.
It's not about losing money either.
No, I understand. I have similar philosophies.
Yeah. Mark Burris, I like watching Mark Burris' stuff. I don't know whether you watch any of his stuff, but he's good value. And
I've seen him live a few times. He's good.
Yeah, he's good, and he's. I like his approach, and he tells a story in a recent interview or podcast he did that he when he sold Wizard for $500 million or whatever he did, sold it for 2004 or whatever it was. After he sold the deal and made himself $500 million, what did he do? He went. I don't know if you've seen the interview. He goes back to his home, goes back to his hotel room, orders pizza and grabs a beer out of the bar fridge, and that's how he celebrated making $500 million. And for him, it wasn't about making the money; it was the journey. And it was the process, and it was the travels that he took in order to get to there. And for me, that really resonated. And for us, it's the challenge of taking the worst house in the best street and making it the best house in the best street, and in the process, making an impact on the agriculture, horticulture, and landscape industry in South Australia.
I don't think enough people A, understand that, or B, believe what you just said. Yeah, and I think once you've been in business for 10, 15, 20 years, once you get to a certain amount of money, there's not much more that you need unless you're trying to do some crazy things like land on the moon or go to Mars, right? And so then it really becomes about your happiness during that process.
What am I here for?
Yeah.
What am I here to do?
Yeah, and legacy, I think, for a lot of people, and going, well, after it's all said and done, if we sell this, do we leave it in a better place than it was when we bought it? Yeah. Or how am I spoken about while I'm alive, when I'm not in the room, or when I'm not here?
I say to my kids that had I not bought this business, I was actually going to retire and go on mercy ships. Yeah. And mercy ships is like the hospital ships where they go and pack off the coast of Africa and serve people. So I said to them, okay, I'm going to keep working. I said, but the money...
And we're still going to get you there, because that's Judy's retirement plan. So we'll get you there, yeah.
But the idea is that, okay, so I'm going to keep working, so then I'll just give them money instead. So there's this idea of the more that you can bring in is actually the more you can actually send out as well.
And that's another thing that a lot of people don't understand is that, that whole benevolent mindset is much easier to manage when you actually have money. Because...
there's nothing dirty about it, but it's what you do with it.
That's right. And I think money like alcohol and plenty of other things, it emphasises the person that you are or that you were prior to consuming alcohol or getting money. So, if you're a good person, you're going to do good things with it. If you're a bad person, you're going to do bad things with it. So at the moment, you're in South Australia. There's obviously landscapers with as many shortages of staff as you're experiencing with your team. They find person X, he or she wants to do landscape construction. So what else? You've got landscaping.
So we've currently got 11 qualifications on scope. We've just applied for 2 more. So we've got a Certificate 2 in Conservation Ecosystem Management, Cert 2 Landscape Construction, Cert 2 Horticulture, and Certificate 2 in Sports Turf Management. We've got Cert 3s in all of those qualifications, and we've also got a Certificate 4 in Horticulture and a Diploma of Horticulture. And we've just applied for Certificate 4 in Landscape Construction and a Diploma of Landscape Construction.
So if I want to be a fully qualified landscaper in South Australia right now, is there only one of those qualifications that I need to do from an education standpoint? Like if I did a Cert 4 in Landscape Construction and did an apprentice, or a traineeship?
Look, what they're traineeships, and there's a technicality around that. Do you want to explain that?
I'd love you to expand on that because I need to understand it because it's brought up in the people that I'm dealing with are talking about the challenges that we're having between apprenticeships and traineeships. If you can detail that, and then we'll come back and talk about
what do they do?
Well, I think that if we can in this podcast cover what a landscaper needs to do to get their apprentice or trainee qualified, and then what a trainee or apprentice needs to do to find a landscaper to become qualified. You've kind of put those two together, and then that'll bring a bunch of value. But if you can explain the difference between the trainee and apprenticeship as you understand it, and then what that looks like and what could be changed or should be changed in your mind, and then maybe some of the intended and unintended consequences of that change. I know that's a little question, but
I know, and I've actually thought that you might ask me this. So, look, it's I'll try and give you the small answer. Look, the way that I would answer it is that in some ways the term apprenticeship and a traineeship varies across states and jurisdictions. The term is interchangeable, and in many ways it means exactly the same thing, right? The term apprentice generally gets used when you're talking about someone who's undergoing a 2 or 3 year apprenticeship on the job, learning how to do something like an apprentice, like we're talking about landscape gardening, or apprentice builder, carpenter, plumber, those types of hands-on vocational type courses and programs. A trainee generally is associated with courses and someone who's a new employee who's been trained on the job in a business type environment or a medical setting. So we've come from 5 years working in aged care, working in the no risk medical space, which we love the corporate world. The corporate world doesn't love us because we like taking risk, particularly the medical space. So they're just run by doctors and nurses who don't take risks at all. So we don't mix with doctors and nurses anymore. So a trainee would be a trainee nurse. You never even heard someone called an apprentice nurse, but in fact they're the same thing. The interesting thing that we've noticed about the landscape construction sector is that it was only in 2016 that there was actually a dedicated Certificate 3 in landscape construction. Up until then, it was a Certificate 3 in horticulture with a major in landscape construction. So the concept of the landscape construction industry being recognised as an apprenticeship in itself is actually quite new. And I know that I've been speaking to Amanda from MLSA about this, and we've had some conversations about what we can do with ITECA to potentially elevate the status of landscape construction for itself to be recognised as, at the Commonwealth level, as an apprenticeship. If you actually look at the way that the classifications of job outcomes and roles and someone who completes the landscape construction qualification, they're classified as a gardener.
Yeah.
And that's wrong. And so we need to work with you and your organisations and the industry on the ground here, particularly with the MLSA, so that we can work together to try and elevate the status of the industry so that it is recognised as a viable, attractive pathway for people to come into the industry in the same way that someone doing their carpentry ticket is seen as a standalone apprenticeship. So it's a kind of a convoluted answer, but it really and it depends on each state too. You can in South Australia, it's actually the term isn't a trainee, but in fact they are an apprentice. It's just the different jurisdictions actually use the same term to mean the same thing, and so why there's a lot of confusion within the industry. What's the difference between a trainee and apprenticeship? I take that it doesn't matter. It's the same thing.
You've said it doesn't matter, but then in your answer you said elevate to apprentice. So what's like? Do you get different access to funding, or is it?
So at the moment, when you go back to you think about the MEGT and the place that the apprenticeship provider, so the Australian apprenticeship provider provides in terms of joining the dots between when someone the Commonwealth will subsidise or incentivise, so it's not a subsidy, incentivise the employer to take on apprentice. Their classification, they're actually pulling a landscape gardener, they're actually classifying them as a horticulturalist in the gardening sector. It's not actually an apprentice landscape construction. So what we need to do is to make the apprenticeship level at the top level, the Commonwealth recognised landscape construction to be an apprenticeship on its own right, not sitting as a subgroup of horticulture, which is where it sits at the moment.
This might be wrong and disrespectful to the horticulture industry, but I feel it's more likely that horticulture in the landscape world is a subgroup of the landscaping, right? Now, obviously, there is horticulture on its own, and there's garden maintenance, and there's nursery work and all the other things, but landscaping covers so many trades, but it's a sub of one of the trades. So, so the apprenticeship, the word apprenticeship's more, it's a Commonwealth definition mainly, but obviously it has state definition.
Yeah, it's the term apprenticeship and a trainee is a Commonwealth because it's a Commonwealth that supports the employer under an apprenticeship. And
once you finish that apprenticeship, right, you become a qualified landscaper?
Well, this is the interesting thing. What qualifies someone as a landscaper is it's regulated at the industry level.
Yeah.
And so in some areas you have to it's mandatory to have a particular qualification to get a job. And some industries that it's regulated so in the construction industry, you need to have your Certificate 3 in carpentry or, to be recognised as a carpenter. And in South Australia, you need your Certificate 3 in landscape construction. Doesn't necessarily gives you your qual, gives you your certificate, doesn't certify, it just means you've got your qualification. But what you can do when you have that qualification is then apply for your builder's license and enable you to take on jobs more in excess of $10,000, and you need your Certificate 3 in order to do that.
So many moving parts.
Yeah.
And obviously you've got Commonwealth and state government, but also then it breaks up into Consumer Affairs, which takes care of licensing, but then you've got Skills SA, which takes care of supporting skills and training, and then you've got, I guess, government arms like MEGT that take care of getting them in.
And MADEC, which is another arm which supports the students that need support. Yeah.
I guess being a private business owner, as you are, I struggle to understand why we can't sort this out in 4 days and go, let's just change this law here, let's get the licensing sorted out here, let's tie the education to the apprenticeship, to the trade, to the license, sign it, slide it down the table and move on. But I've only been at the helm of the Master Landscapers since October, so we've had maybe 2 board meetings, and I'm trying to understand where the gaps are, because I've got a very analytical mind. I'm like, we'll just fix that and it's sorted.
One of the frustrations for us is that the federal and the state government, while they don't work well together. And so, for example, the federal government have recently upgraded or updated one of the certifications, but the South Australian government were 6 months behind. So we couldn't enrol people in the newest qualification because we wouldn't have got...
Because the state wasn't ready.
Because the state wasn't ready.
From a funding standpoint.
Exactly. And so without that funding, we can't...
Well, that's
we
right.
just can't figure...
So
there's this... So that I would say that the government, the federal and states, and not just South Australia, all of them have to be tighter married together.
But it's probably... There's so many other things that they're trying to deal with, right? We don't... like, if you can argue their side, like, this is not the only thing they're worrying about when running a state. Yeah. So they're kind of like, So that pathway needs to be.
But that's their job.
That is their job.
That's their job, right?
But their job is to do that, but their focus is to keep their job. So what's more important, building a hospital and just getting more ambulances, or making sure that we are, keeping up with the federal government to ensure, and it all matters.
Yeah.
But what, from an optics standpoint, what's being, there's not enough noise being, and I think the answer to the question that I started to ask about how it all clicks together is the louder this gets, the quicker it's going to get fixed.
Yeah. And so the more voices, so if MLSA and if the different, our clients, if they can sort of start to petition and say, we want our people to be trained in the most recent versions of things, but hey, we can't enrol them because you haven't got your act together, that actually would help a lot.
Look, and in the defence, look, as I said before, I think the Department for Education South Australia are an excellent outfit. I mean, John Evangelista and his team are some really good operators, some very, very well-intentioned people and some incredibly intelligent people.
Well, those individuals are probably fighting against the same...
Oh, they are. They understand.
They
understand that. They understand the challenges that we face. Look, I'll give you a good example of what one of the challenges that we have. And look, the national regulator. I'm about to get audited, so I want to be careful what I say about the Australian Schools Quality Authority.
But out after the audit, don't stress.
But so a good example is this. So we had over 100 current apprentices doing Civic 3 landscape construction in South Australia.
And some chunks outside, or just in SA?
Well, let's just say in South Australia. We've got a lot more than that, but let's just say it's 100, right? They were enrolled in the 2016 version of Certificate 3 in Landscape Construction. 12 months ago, that qualification became superseded, and the organisation that manages that is Skills IQ, and they do that. That's called an industry reference committee, and so people like yourselves, who are in your position that MLSA would contribute to the design of the new qualification that would be the Certificate 3 Landscape Construction. So the next time that comes around, you and I are going to have a conversation. We're going to try and see what we can do to make sure that the subjects that are delivered as part of that qual meet the needs of industry, right?
So the industry drives the education.
It does, right? Yes. And so that gets updated about every 5 years. And so when a qualification becomes updated, a registered training organisation has 12 months to teach out the students that are in the current, so let's say the 2016 version. We have 12 months to complete them. Otherwise, we need to transition them to the new qualification, right? And so the difference between the 16 and the 21 version, which we're only enrolling into now, and we've transitioned right across, has 2 more units of competency. So at 6 weeks intervals, that's another 12 weeks of training, and that is another 12 weeks of imposition on the employer, and it's another 12 weeks that the employee stays on apprentice wages, and it's another 12 weeks that the Commonwealth has to pay the incentive to the employer on all of these other knock-on effects, right? Our qualification runs for 2 years. So when transition occurs, we're expecting more than 50% of our students to need to transition. So we made a petition through ITECA. So this is, you ask about how do we fix these things. This is what ITECA does. It keeps the Commonwealth and the state governments honest, and we lobby within that space at the federal and the state level to make sure, and as best we can, that the state and the federal government work together with private providers.
Are they a not-for-profit independent?
They're a peak body for RTOs, right? So the example was that we made a petition. We're actually invited by ASQA to say, look, you're one of the key stakeholders. We're actually one of the only RTOs offering Cert 3 landscape in the whole country. There's only 11 of us. And so we're the only private provider in South Australia that actually offer it under funding. And so we got a lot of students as a result of that. And so we got asked by ASQA to say, okay, can you please tell us the impact that it would have on new students if with the extension stays at 12 months, and we basically said we needed to extend it another 12 months because of all those reasons I said, it's the impact on the student, the industry, the employer.
They need to know that they've got 2 years of guaranteed runway to finish a 2-year course, regardless of the change in the course. So you can finish it based on curriculum A.
What you started.
Otherwise, it's not fair. You thought you signed up for 15, all of a sudden, what, I've got to do 17?
Yeah, well, it's like anything. You're trying to sell anything. The smoother that sales process is, the better, right? So you can tell this apprentice, this is exactly what will happen. Not, look, if anything changes halfway, you're going to have to do 2 more modules and get paid this much money.
And the employer's going to have to pay for 2 more subjects.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a shitty conversation for you guys to have. Like,
And
we just dodged the bullet. Yeah. So only because we punted and because we're risk takers, and it came off. Thank God. So we made a petition, and the teach out date was 14th of February, right?
Like in next week.
Which is
I don't know.
6 days away.
Very aware. It's a very
6 days away. It is. Thanks for reminding me, actually. So, I've got to get onto that.
It's important to me because we have a sale that ends on that day.
Right. Okay. So it's nothing romantic. Oh, sorry. Okay.
No.
No roses and chocolates.
No. Fertilizer.
There's so many places that could go. Yeah.
That is horrible.
So we made a submission with the support of ITECA, and we lobbied quite hard through ITECA to have ASQA extend the teach-out period by 12 months.
Yep.
We notified all of the students that we had, and more than 100 students that had to transition that were not going to complete, even if they did extend the transition. So that conversation's already been had.
But you had a conversation with the students.
No, we only had it a few months ago.
But
right?
they weren't going to finish for another year.
They weren't, so it didn't matter. So they had to be transitioned.
They're hearing about it early. They're not at the 11th hour and being told, sorry, it goes to... Yeah.
And so what we did at the same time is we identified which of our students were likely to complete if the transition was extended. And so we said to them, what we're going to do is we're going to wait to the very last minute before we transition you. And we waited, and we said we would give it until the 6th of February. Yep. And that was Monday, and nothing had come through, despite phone call, emails, lobbying, everything. It didn't come through, and it came through on Tuesday night at 5:30. Yep. And so 7
days. 7 days. That's not a lot of time for us as a business to gear up.
Awful. And so this is an example of
how...
But
it was the desired result.
It was only because most RTOs would have already transitioned students because they were not going to...
they weren't expecting that.
They weren't expecting that. And our need to meet the needs of industry meant that we had to take the punt because we knew if we transitioned 100 or so students that were 2 or 3 subjects away from finishing their qual after 2 years to say, guess what, you've got to do another 2 subjects. For us, it was like, we need a business decision here. And we punted and it came off, and they made it at the last minute. But the national regulator shouldn't be leaving it to the last week. They should have informed us 3 months ago, 6 months ago that it was going to be extended. Yep. And this is, I guess, part of the challenge that we have as an RTO. Our national regulator is severely under-resourced. It works out of Canberra. They're working, they're about to go to a cost recovery model, which for them will mean that they'll have to be a bit more transparent around their turnaround rates, and these types of things should not be occurring. So whilst we have challenges with the Commonwealth with changes of legislation and changes of policy, we've got the state government wanting to do this thing, we're also competing with a national regulator, it's us, which is under extreme duress, and their turnaround time is extremely slow. And this is a really good example of how some might say, why the hell do you get into this business when there's so many competing forces? But, it's...
Because obviously you guys both have a pedigree and skill set and resume that you could go make money doing anything else. Well, not anything else, but other things.
We'd like to think so.
You could sit on boards or,
That's Judy's job. She's the director. She runs the business. She's on the ARCD, so she'll do all that.
Yeah, let's not talk about the ARCD. That's awkward.
I passed.
I haven't failed.
That's true.
So,
but you were talking. One of your questions was around how do we get people? So how do you get that? The person who wants the job with the employer.
Yeah. Look, I think I just want to it shouldn't be this. It shouldn't be that hard, right? And obviously, we can only control things outside of legislation. So you guys have got the set of rules that you work to, and then the landscapers and the people that desire to be a landscaper just have to work around that. So, what do we do?
But the government, the South Australian government has recognised that there is, it's difficult to attract people into an industry. Like 40-degree day in Adelaide, who wants to be out there?
I mean, I think it's meant to be pretty toasty today.
Yeah. And I sort of think, and the people, it's not amazing rates for the apprentices to be paid.
Yep.
And so this So the South Australian government has recently put out some information about that. Do you want
Is that the appendix? Or that's skills shortage? That's a copy
No,
of skills
it's
shortage?
maybe different. So one of the reasons I say that the Department for Education in South Australia is actually quite progressive and good. I think they're the only state that offers the opportunity for fee-free subsidised training.
Is this what's recently been announced?
Well, they've asked us to make a submission. We've applied for 150 spots for the Certificate 3 in Landscape Construction, which would mean that...
They're calling it fee-free TAFE, right? In the
people know it. Want me
That's
to
what it's been called, right?
people to explain what fee-free TAFE actually is?
But it's not fee-free TAFE, it's fee-free RTO.
No.
No?
Well, it is.
Yeah.
So what
Just
fee-free...
TAFE for the government.
TAFE is like the generic word, you
Yeah.
know, like, you know.
The public provider is probably an
ESG,
easy way.
right?
Yeah.
Like it's the word that
Exactly.
everyone calls for the education.
But as we said, only 10% of students actually use that.
Which blows my mind because you say ESCI, I'll grab a box that holds ice, right? You say TAFE, I go to TAFE. I'm not thinking
Exactly.
like that's not fair to use that as a generic term, I don't think.
But even the CEO of ITECA, he tells a story quite often about how his son was going to TAFE, but in fact he was going to a private RTO, but he generically calls it going to TAFE because that's called going to vocational
That's a
training.
marketing problem. That's a whole other.
That's one of
'Cause when
ITECA's
people-
agendas,
when-
right?
yeah, when we bought this business and people said to me, "What are you buying?" I said, "It's an RTO." They, what? It's like a private TAFE.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
please don't use the word TAFE. So it's
We've just said it 500 times.
Look, I don't want to bash TAFE. I think there's some amazing people that work there, and it's just like
That's
public.
when you're going to harvest your employees, isn't it?
That's right. Look,
no, because we don't want their bad
edit
habits.
that out. Look, it's like the difference between a public high school and a private high school. You know, you have to have a solid public high school foundation in every state because that makes sure that no one gets left behind, right? But then at the same time, you need to have, and you know, the way that stories that I tell is that public provider's role is to make sure that no one gets left behind and to scale down so that everyone can equally participate. Yeah. And that's the role of the public provider, and it should be. And we need a solid TAFE system. We need a solid public provider. We need solid, public high schools so that everyone in our community can get access to a decent education, decent healthcare. I mean, that's just, that's easy to understand. Yeah. But as a private provider, our mantra is not to slow down so we don't miss anyone. Our go is to progress ahead and drag people along with us. And it's a different mindset.
You're kind of piercing. You're the front lead bicycle that kind of cuts the air for everyone to kind of.
Yeah.
And we want to work with industry representatives to make sure that what we're delivering is exactly on point for what the industry needs, not something that was developed and was possibly needed 10 years ago. Yeah. So some of the training that we do, because it's to some extent it's mandated to us, people go, we don't do it that way anymore. And we go, I know, but we have to teach you this. But also we understand that this is actually how it's done now.
Yeah, that puts you in a difficult position, or at least your trainers, because then what are you having and you don't have to answer this, but you're going to, this is how it's being taught, this is actually how it's being done. So it's not in line with curriculum. Like it's. Oh, look, I'm not saying that.
And that's what happens when qualifications gets updated. Yeah. So the subjects or the units of competency.
Actually, it's a good thing.
Units, when you update from the 21 landscape construction qual, they added 2 minutes and they added more core units.
What did they add? Do you know? If you don't know off the top of your head, that's fine.
No, what the basic changes, they moved from 8 core units to 10 core units. And so they defined what those core units were. And
what's a core unit like?
So,
paving?
Follow workplace health and safety procedures.
So there's that, and then
and then there's the specialised area. So the area would be, implement a paving project, which would be an
brick
elective.
Brick and block, I think.
Brick and block.
Brick and block, I think, stuff like
and
that.
there might be a timber or decking or
all sorts. And so there's a list of about 50 different units that are electives.
Is irrigation in there?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay.
There's a couple of types of irrigation ones.
Yeah. But that's crazy to have 50 electives in it. I mean, that just
to choose from.
How diverse landscaping as a trade is.
But we, as an RTO, don't offer all 50.
You can't.
No,
Can't.
we can't.
The fact that you're offering one,
Although employers expect us to be able to do
one
so.
in Renmarks, like that's pretty extreme as it is.
Yeah.
So
So
no,
what,
that's fair, but that's employers. Like,
Yeah.
but we go and we say, okay, basically, which are the most popular ones? Which are the ones that the employers say
Yeah.
are the most useful? That's the ones we're going to offer.
Yeah, you kind of have to take your desire to be great humans and help the world, run it through the filter of economics, and make sure that you're still going to make some or not lose any, and then spit out the other side. And you might have 36 or 50 or 24. Like you can't do it. I mean, until you get
And also,
big
we
enough
have to make sure that our staff are qualified to deliver
Yeah.
those. So, we can't just say, go and teach this.
Yeah.
They've got to actually be industry experienced and have it they've got to be certified
which
in
is
what they're
hard when
teaching.
you've got an industry skills shortage to find people that are happy to move out of what's
But so our model of bringing in more staff has basically been to find the right people and then us make them trainers. So they've got lots of industry experience.
so you're teaching tradies to be educators.
Because what we recognised was we don't want academics. We actually want people who know how to resonate with the students. And so choosing the right people and then having them go through, we cover the costs of their certification in training, and then that makes them a trainer. And then they can go out. And so it's the right people. So that
makes sense.
So that's the model that we're using. So we've been quite successful. We plan to grow quite significantly this year. Got this great new office in Harndorf, which is awesome. So that office is going to support our admin team. It's also like a hub for the trainers to come to get all the stuff they need, and out they go to the sites. But we were talking about the South Australian government and the fee-free.
Fee-free tape.
Because
What's the difference?
and I only want to bring us back to that because
that's right.
that's a way of us. How do we help you get more people into the industry?
So it's fee free, but it's not supported.
So under our we have a funded activities agreement with the state government. Part of that agreement is that we are required to charge, or that basically the student or the employer needs to make a financial contribution. They need some skin in the game.
And we're actually not allowed to do it for free.
And that, I'm guessing, is the same as charging a ticket to something, even though you don't want to, just so that people treat it with some more respect. And
in some ways, I guess it depends on how people look at it. So we are required by law to charge a participant fee, and we can charge what we like for that participant fee. So what we do is we get let's say we get $200 in subsidy for completing a particular unit of competency, and we only get that when we've completed it. So we've got to cover the costs before we actually get paid, and that's 6 weeks after a student completes. So we're carrying, we're carrying, students for 2 or 3 months before we get paid, which is just in any business that's difficult.
Especially when the variable is the desire to finish something or personal circumstances.
Yeah, the students basically just rock up.
Yeah,
I haven't done anything.
Yeah,
that's right. And so let's say we get $200 in subsidy for completing. We charge as a participant fee generally 50% of that. So we charge an additional $100, which covers our costs of going on site, right? And covers that. And we're set for a 10% net profit. And we're happy with that. Yeah. And in any business that makes 10% net bottom line and we're happy. We're not happy to make, you know what I mean? That's reasonable.
The majority of traditional businesses are chasing 10, right? If you can cruise into 12s and 15s, or you start to manufacture your own products, or you've got specific IP that gives you more profit, great. But that tends. And
given that we're using public money, we're being paid using the public money, we have a responsibility not to gouge, right? So we're not here to generate huge amount of money.
It's funny you say that, but you're also on the inverse of that, given the fact that the public need it. If you can't make that, then smart people like you will go do something else.
Correct.
And you won't have education companies.
Correct.
So
if they make it too difficult for us, we're going to go.
You have to find that beautiful cadence of make enough if you care and you can keep doing it.
That's right. And so we're required on a contract to charge a participant fee, that $100 per unit. When someone enrolls at a course in TAFE are not required to charge a participant fee. So that $100 is fee-free. So when someone enrolls in a TAFE course under fee-free, they do not have to put any skin in the game.
So you're
no cash.
Approval to be able to do that effectively.
So this is why I was getting back to saying that the South Australian government are quite proactive and supportive of private providers. They announced in I think November of last year that they were going to offer 2,000 in total across 50 qualifications in South
Equal
Australia.
split or first in best
Don't know.
choice?
They just said there was roughly 50 qualifications, and they were going to offer 2,000 spots for fee-free training in targeted, in what they have their targeted training list there.
So it might be weighted towards skills shortage or training shortage.
It is definitely
And
to that.
different
So where they need to get people into the industry. So we applied for 150. I don't know of the 2,000. I don't know how many we're going to get, but if the rule we thought that
And
maybe
that was
if there
landscape
was
construction.
Does it say?
Yeah, and it was only Cert 3 landscape construction that we were able to offer these places for. But the catch was that we have to work with an industry association like MLSA, which we are and will, in promoting, if we're successful in achieving, let's say we get 50 spots, then we will work with the MLSA to promote to specific targets. So the catch was that it has to be, you have to actively promote to in the Indigenous or Native Australians, to persons with disability or learning disabilities. But more interestingly, and this is where I think we need to talk, and this is why we're meeting with Amanda later on, is around attracting women into male-dominated traditional industries. And as well as I do, Clint, that the landscaping industry is probably 99% male, and that
it's getting better. The reality is it's a physical trade, and that's how it's going to be.
It is. Well, I know plenty of strong females, so you know what I mean. So our what we're trying, and this is part of the initiative from Skills SA, is that we need to potentially look to bring on women into the landscaping sector. And a way that we can do that is to not charge the employer the participant fee, so that further incentivises them to bring on a female into a male-dominated workplace, and so they will keep their Commonwealth incentive, the $6,000 that they won't, and they won't have to use that for their participant fee. They'll get to keep that.
And is the state government covering what the
participant fee? Yeah, so they'll pay us directly.
100, you'll get 300 instead of 200.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense.
So hopefully that will make it easier, particularly for some small companies that might not be able to afford the participant fee and don't want to send their students to the public provider.
No cash flow impact either.
Yeah, so that will hopefully help them.
Just to be clear, I wasn't saying that women can't landscape.
No.
It is
a physical job.
Generational change. It's not that they're not physically capable. It's that for generations, as you said, women have been told you can't do it.
Yeah.
So we need the girls.
Yeah.
I've got a 6-year-old daughter to understand at that age that these are the possible options when you get to the point of employment.
So my background is in technology. So in 1985, I started in IT, and I was the one woman on a floor of 80 programmers.
It's funny because you said it was your dad that said.
My grandfather said I couldn't be allowed.
Like if he understood IT, he would have said the same thing.
Yeah.
Like,
so
what are you talking about?
So I got into IT, and it was a completely male-dominated industry. And so a woman recently said to me, "Why is there not more women at your level in IT?" And I said, "Because we weren't there 30 years ago."
Yeah, I'm the most experienced because there was no one else. They haven't left.
And so my daughter is now, she's an engineer. She's a renewable energy engineer.
Yeah.
Same thing, a very male-dominated industry. She said in her cohort at university there was 3 women.
Yeah.
And so she's got a lot of opportunities because the engineering field is doing the same thing as landscaping and saying, how do we attract more women? Because it's just diversity. It's not the fact that we're women. It's a diverse, different way of thinking.
And you're missing out on 50% of the potential workforce.
Exactly.
So
when you've got a skills shortage, and you
need to open up all these opportunities, right?
Yeah. So the government there'll be rules around who those. If you say get 50 spots,
we may not get any.
If you get 50, will there be rules that it must be from those?
We must know they don't have to be, but we have to actively promote, and that's what we intend to do.
Because that's the hard thing. It's like when they say you have to hire an Australian citizen to do this job. You're like, there aren't any, but we can bring some people in from the Philippines who are skilled to do this. Okay, now we can talk about it. So yeah.
But that's our intention. I think that, it's conversations we've had with Amanda over time. We're absolutely committed to this. We want to make some positive change to the industry, and there's a skill shortage going on nationally around all vocations and qualifications, and I think we all need to think outside the box. We're doing things like bringing our own apprentice. I want to talk to the fact that in the vocational space, someone doing a certificate for and training and assessment, which certifies them to be a trainer and assessor, there is actually a skill shortage going on for trainers and assessors. I've had an ad up on Seek, and anyone can have a look at it now, where we're trying to attract landscape trainers to do landscape construction, horticulture, sports turf and stuff like that. I've had one decent application in the last 2 months.
I think, and I talk
there's
about
a skill
this
shortage.
a lot.
Yeah.
That the people you are trying to hire are not looking for a job, right? They have a job and they're happy.
Yeah.
So you've got a marketing problem. It's not a wage problem, or it's not you've got to go find the humans. And we have exactly the same situation here. You touched on before how you hire people and then teach them the skills. We do exactly the same thing. I've got the most diverse. I've got a chef that's in irrigation sales, and we've got McDonald's managers or truck drivers that are now running shops.
But they're the right people.
Because I'm a big believer of hire the personality, not the skills. And we are patient enough that we're happy to wait and grow slowly as those, but they don't leave because they get that. But I think for you to find those people, that's going to be hand-to-hand combat. Yeah. And it's going to be working with industry bodies like the MLSA to go to events and talk to people, and then even do a podcast like this and say, we're looking for landscapers that might be at a point in their career where they A, want to give back, or B, want to not be doing as much physical labour because maybe their knees aren't what they used to be.
I was thinking to go to physios and say, have you got any landscapers who
Yeah,
are coming?
that's thinking so far out the box. It's like, we're looking to hire.
Where am I going to find these people?
Yeah.
So we're actually doing that. So you're right, and we're a little bit new to this space. We're sort of understanding that there are some inherent challenges around that, but because we're the only private provider offering subsidised training in the Cert 3 landscaping and also sports turf management, we're the only one in South Australia doing it. All of the graduates with the qualifications are actually our former students. So we have a list of names that we can go to, and it puts us in a very advantageous position. 3 of our current trainers are former students of the RTO anyway.
The other challenge is you don't want to go poaching staff from your customers, because then you're taking a big shit.
Well, there's a big challenge in that. So we currently have, you're right.
You just have to tread carefully how you do that.
Look, so a guy that we've just commenced as a study coach. So what we're doing in order to attract talent to our business is we're looking for guys, because they're mostly guys sort of in that 40 to 45 age bracket, 40 to 50, sort of our vintage.
Someone you're going to get 10 to 15 years out of as well.
Their knees are shot. They've had enough standing in the sun. They've done 20 years in the field, but they've got so much knowledge.
Business, and they just want to be at home at night.
Yeah. And so what we will do is we'll take because what we need as a trainer, you need 3 things. You need to have qualification. You need your certificate for in training and assessment, but you need the qualification you're going to assess, and you need industry currency. So you need to be working in the industry in the last 12 months, right? Yep. So you need that trifecta of skills in order to become a trainer. Yep. And so we're looking for people that have got the qualifications. So someone who's got a certificate 3, and I encourage all of your listeners to really think about this as an opportunity, because we're actively looking now. So someone who's got the certificate 3 or a 4 or a diploma of horticulture or something like that, who's got 20 years in the industry, they've had enough being outside, and they've got all this knowledge here, and they think they'd be a good teacher. Yep. They've had apprentices on site for over the years, and they've brought them on site, and they think, actually, I could do this for a living. What we will do is we will employ you as a study coach, and we will put you through the certificate for in training and assessment. We will fund that, pay the cost of that, and we will engage you as a 50-year-old apprentice trainer and bring you through our program over 6 months, build you up to the point that you then become a certified trainer, and then set you out in the field.
Will they be working full-time for you while they're training?
Yeah. And we will potentially give them a day a week to train.
Yeah.
To study.
Yeah.
And we've just engaged a chap this week. He started this week, and he's actually doing that right now.
I've got actually a lady coming in this afternoon. Yeah. She's got a diploma of horticulture, and she's just ready to be a teacher. Yeah.
How good is that? Is the turf management pathway to qualification, licensing, or employment different to the landscape? Like, is that more advanced?
I don't quite understand it that well.
Well, I know this one a little bit more. So it's a much longer qualification. The sports turf management is like 24 units, where horticulture is, I think, 16 now, and landscaping is 17. So there's more involved because you go into the real nitty gritty. But a lot of them, like, they're working at golf courses, they're working at, Adelaide Oval, whatnot. But there's not much training around in Australia for this. So we're really lucky to have that qualification. Yeah. But it's a very different type of qualification. So they do all of the horticulture subjects, and then they do it's a whole set.
So the sports turf management is horticulture
on steroids,
with sports turf on top,
so
basically.
Still doing plant?
They do all that, yeah. So they do
controlling
all that
weeds
kind of stuff.
and all that jazz.
Yeah, and then obviously there's the work health safety and then chemicals.
So we're on site at yesterday at Thaxted Golf Course. We've got 3 apprentices doing the sports turf management there. Yep. We've got apprentices at Adelaide Oval. We've got them, across major golf courses around Australia, around South Australia. It's a really unique qualification. There's only 3 RTOs. There's 4 nationally. There's only 4 RTOs that are offering the Certificate 3 in Sports Turf.
Yeah.
That's TAFE Queensland, TAFE New South Wales, Melbourne Polytechnic and ARO College.
Because I think we might have had TAFE here doing that one. It might have been the landscaping one and it got dropped.
Yeah.
And it's hard for those guys.
They can't attract trainers who've got the Sports Turf qualification and the Cert 4 TAE.
It's too hard, yeah.
We've got all this. We've done all the students. So we've actually got all the... We have access to all the persons that have the qualifications that are the golf, keepers, greenkeepers and stuff like that now. So we're looking to actually actively progress this with Turf SA as a viable, just in the same way we're going to do landscape construction. Yeah. And potentially we need to get the two you guys together and we all work together about how we elevate all of this for the betterment of everyone.
I have a relationship with them and we can talk about that off camera. But you're doing the right things. You're starting to engage with the industry bodies. Obviously, they've got a new body that covers more, which is better because you're not dealing with STA and SAGSA, separately. Yeah. And having the same conversations with 2 separate people.
Yeah.
And I think you'll probably find at a higher percentage of sports turf businesses being more open around the people going and doing training. Because it's been so part of moving through a greenkeeping apprenticeship than it has becoming a landscape apprentice because it's so fresh. But
it's embedded.
The reason I was asking, I was just curious if there was some kind of synchronicity there where you could go, well, this is working in sports turf. Can we mirror that into landscape and use it as an example? Because they are, cousin traits.
Yeah, a lot of the units that they study are transferable. So if someone has done a Cert 3 in landscape construction, or they weren't done the sports turf, there's a lot of crossover.
You probably get about 25-30% credit transfer. It's a lot of crossover.
And that's answering a question that I wasn't thinking, but the more if we're going to government to try and work out how to get this qualification really clear, the pathway to being a licensed landscaper from a education level, is there one? Because I don't even know what the trade is. You become a greenkeeper, but you don't need a license for that.
Well, I think in your role as the MLSA, you guys need to set the agenda. What determines someone to be a licensed landscaper? Yeah. That needs to be set by industry.
All we're doing is educating them.
There is and this is the next part of my education around it, is that licensing is. I need to understand it better, and because of the apprentice trainee conversation happening simultaneously with me trying to understand. It's probably too early for me to start talking to the office about the licensing. I just need to capture some more information, and I hate that because that bureaucracy of waiting 6 months or 8 months before it's the right time to have a meeting to talk about it. Just I'm so used to just ringing up and going, let's sort this out.
Let's sort it out.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right now, face to face. Let's get it done. But, so Harndorf, we were talking obviously before the podcast. That seems like for a South Australian resident to start a business and place it in Harndorf wouldn't have been my first thought. And that, I guess unless it was Mount Barker Connect and whatever. What was the thought process there? Do you just like beer?
Why wouldn't you want to be in Harndorf? That's what I'd say. First of all,
beer and shinnies, When
travel, petrol, meetings in the city.
We're from Sydney. It's only 20 minutes up the road. It's not that far.
No. But the real reason is so we took over, and the office was in Bridgewater and had been in Bridgewater for a really long time. Yeah. But it was a tiny office, and when I walked in there, I thought we can't scale here. Yeah. So we immediately started looking for a new place, and we wanted somewhere that we could have, parking for all of our stuff, store all of our equipment. Have a nice office for the staff to work from. I'm a big believer in nice things. So a site came up in Harndorf, and we had looked at other ones and they weren't appropriate, and this one was great. Yeah. A lot of our staff work and live in the hills, so for them it was very attractive.
You don't want to just rip that band off.
Exactly. We sort of said, we even went, what do you think if we worked, moved down to Glen Osmond, saying, going down the hill is a no. Yeah. So the staff from Mount Barker, Nairn, Littlehampton, Milo. So that worked, and a lot of our clients are out that way.
Yep.
So because a lot of the work that's happening, I guess, the construction in Mount Barker is going berserk.
Yeah.
So it seemed like a natural place to stay. If we had no reason to stay there, we would have moved somewhere else. But it worked out well, and Hahndorf is a great.
I think also the optics around it played a big part in it. I think that it's not lip service to say that we're going to service the regions. We are. Yeah. We will go where TAFE won't go. Yeah. We will go to regions, and we will support employers and students who are in the far corners of this state, and we will go there. Yeah. And if it costs money, and the optics around putting ourselves in the main. The busiest high street in all of South Australia, for us, made sense. For me personally, my mother was born here in South Australia, but she went to Marion High School. My grandfather at one point was the publican at the Lion Hotel in North Adelaide. So my family, I was coming here for years as a kid for holidays, and my grandmother was German stock, came out with the Lutherans back in 100 years ago. So me going to Hahndorf was yeah. Look, I guess, and so for me, I'd probably been there 20 times in my life over the years. So for me, it was quite natural, and I feel part South Australian anyway. Yeah. So even though I'm from Sydney now, but my mum's a very proud South Australian. So and she was born in Loxton, and her grandfather. Were brothers of the Hall soft drink family. Okay. So I have a close affinity to South Australia, and for me, I think being in the regions was important to show and demonstrate that we're actually not Adelaide centric. Most of our customers and landscape construction businesses especially are in and around suburban Adelaide, but us coming from Sydney, the distance from central Adelaide to Hahndorf, come on, it's only 40 minutes. It's not that far.
But even though their business is based in Adelaide, because we visit them on site, a lot of the sites it doesn't matter. Yeah. So we'll find out often the day before where our trainer's going to go.
Hahndorf and drag a string out, I guess, to Gawler out to Onkaparinga into Mount Barker down to the coast. It's not silly. We had we did a seminar at Mount Osmond. Because of that same reason, they can come from down the freeway and they can come in from each side. So it's not. Yeah, I was just curious around that. And
the freeway's pretty good. Yeah, you're doing 110 all the way there and back. So it's even though the distance is there, it's pretty good. It's a good freeway.
Generally is open.
Generally, although we've been caught a couple of times. I'm sure don't know how I've missed a few of those speeding tickets. I swear where those secret cameras are. I'm still trying to figure out what they are. They're pretty bad.
I think I've found all of them.
Yeah, I haven't had a speeding ticket for 10 years.
Yeah, I use cruise control now.
Yeah, and I've like a lot of the cars that I've owned have been high powered, and the last time I got caught speeding was coming down the freeway in a 500 horsepower car, but I was doing 49 in a 40 zone. So the camera changes when you get to the bottom of the freeway. So if it's normally 80, if it drops the speed, the camera drops with it. And I was like, I didn't even think. I was like, I'm slowed down.
Yeah.
That's acceptable. Nope.
No.
So, but something's got to pay for it. That big tunnel. What is that?
The government's got to pay for the subsidised training, so I guess they get us another way, don't they?
That's right.
That's right.
I don't have anything more. Obviously, there's going to be millions of questions from the membership and from landscapers and then potential apprentices. If they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do it? Is the website where all the contact details are? Or?
Yeah, so you can, inquiries at aro.edu.au.
Yep.
So we both look at that every day. They can call the office, 8399 1066.
And you've got staff there Monday to Friday?
Yep. And I answer the phone every hour of the night and day. So
I'm happy to take calls as well. And I in fact, I'd offer you, Clint, that if you do have a number of questions, I was thinking this is a really important thing we need to talk about. I'll be more than happy to come back. And if you've got a list of questions and you've got some live, someone wanted to ring in and ask questions, I'm more than happy to take them. Yeah, it is a critical thing that we need to do. And on hand on heart, we're here to make a difference and make this whole landscape, excuse the pun, a better place. And be more than happy to come back come back at your leisure.
Nearly made it through.
Yeah.
And I even checked on the way in.
It's the Landscape Association. There's definitely some lost people that aren't really sure where this all connects together.
Yeah.
And I know
If they reach out to us, we can help. And if they're wanting more information, also MEGT and MAS National can help. With explaining how all that contracty stuff works, and we can explain how the education part works.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I mean, that's the job of MEGT and Mass National, is to answer the questions from employers about how apprenticeships works. That's not our job. Our job is to deliver the training based on what the employer negotiates or asks for from the apprenticeship provider. So specific questions around that, I encourage people to go and look up MEGT or Mass National, have conversations with them around what it is involved around apprenticeships, but questions around the delivery of training and what we can do to make it better on the field and how we can work with industry. I'm all for that. Right. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I know you've got a busy day, so I'll let you go.
Good to meet you.
Thank you.
And flying in.
Yeah.
We'll pretend you flew just to come and see me, but...
Well, I did actually. I actually changed my whole schedule because I was using this interview with you. So
there you go.
There you go.
Really special.
That's absolutely true.
I hope it's well received. And yeah, I wish you all the best. And hopefully, we'll obviously be working together a lot. But if there's anything I can do to help, then by all means.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Likewise. Thanks, Clint.